Hello, heathens, and welcome back to Spinning the Wheel podcast with me, your disciplined and analytical host, Megan Angus. Yeah, sure, some days. If this is your first time here, we do pagan shit, so get into it. If it's not your first time here, thanks for coming back. Hi, it's nice to see you. Oh my god. Okay. Uh, let's just get right into this mess of a week. No, it's not going to be that bad, but it is going to be a little weird. This is 2024 Beltane season, waxing moon in Virgo, lunar week. I still don't know which one it is. So, again, I think it's somewhere in the teens. Whatever. Um, let's see. Not too much to say before we get into the stuff. Free Palestine, right? Let's bring healing and liberation to Sudan, Haiti, Congo. You know, the people, right? The humans. Everybody struggling in the grip of the patriarchy and the kyriarchy. Um, Goddess bless and keep me and all of our queer family, trans family, intersex family, um, my bisexuals and pansexuals out there. Hello, I see you, and I grope you when you consent. So hey, hi. This is the season, right, for love that comes in all shapes and sizes. So get into it, people. Have some and get some on you. Um, my books are full for June. My books are open for July. Book yourself a reading before the books fill up. If you want a discount, sign up to my newsletter or sign up to my Patreon. Oh, hey, thanks, patrons, because you guys are the reason why I'm still doing this. So if anybody out there is like, why is she still doing this? It's their fault. They did it. My patrons make it possible for me to do this work. You guys, I don't even care if you don't smell good. Whatever. It's thank you. I appreciate everything that you do for me and with me and occasionally to me. Um, for patrons, there are notes for these podcasts. The new moons and the full moons have been getting fancy notes. We're gonna keep that up for until I don't. Uh, there's classes and there's downloads and there's workbooks and there's a lot of stuff on Patreon. You get discount codes as well. Um, yeah, check it out. If you don't want to subscribe to something, that's cool. I get it. You can go to my website and throw $1 in my tip jar. Send me a donation on Venmo. We love it. Buy me a coffee. Buy me an espresso. Excuse me. Thank you. Appreciate it in advance. um, I don't know if I mentioned this. I feel like I did a couple of weeks ago, but while we were chilling, and witnessing, the horrors of Earth as you do, this podcast hit over 20,000 plays. Wild, wild. Some of my most popular episodes have over 500 listens now. What? That's insane. That's crazy and awesome. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really, really appreciate that. If donating and financially supporting is not something that's reasonable for you because, hi, it is Earth 2024 and everything is entirely too expensive, share this on social media, share this with your friends and family, your coworkers, your besties. That to me is like one of the coolest things when people trust their people with me. I really appreciate that. Very, very cool. Just send some good vibes my way. I say that every week, but it's honestly the truth. um, uh, Live classes are coming back. I swear to God. Pick a god, sure. Um, I will be hosting the Sunday night ritual at Cascadian Midsummer this year. Love that little festival that we have here in Washington. Love that community. Mwah. See you all soon around the bonfire. Um, and I will be running tarot standalone classes and workshops coming up. Sign up to my newsletter / sign up to Patreon if you want to hear about that stuff early bird, right, in advance of everybody else. If you want to get discount codes that you can use on those classes and workshops, sign up. Okay. Um Okay, let's get into the stuff. That's plenty of that. Let's get into the stuff. This week, in theory, is going to be kind of a quickie, um, because we have a lot of stuff coming up next week, and I want to save that stuff for next week. So let us, for the last time this year, ground into our Beltane energy. Beltane energy is centered in action, fecundity, virility, fertility, sexuality, or sensuality, whatever those words mean for you. Bringing our energies into union with other people and places and ideas and things and projects, initiation into interpersonal mysteries, playing and pranking and trickster energy, rites of passage, as well as divination work. All is stuff that we're doing throughout Beltane. And we are officially in the last 7-ish days of Gemini season, Beltane season, and spring. This is it. This is the last hurrah for this year and this turn of the wheel. I mentioned this in last week's episode, running from June 10th to July 7th. We are in the Celtic tree month of Oak. Again, you can get more information about that in last week's episode, but I will say that these are our last days with the Oak King, who has protected us and overseen our work and our process since winter solstice. They have been guiding us through the last 6 months of all of that. Okay. And so we are now about to be handed over to the Holly King. Here we go. For the next 6 months of whatever all of that is that's coming up next. Okay. So this week, our lunar week, is starting with a half moon at 23 degrees of Virgo at 10:18 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else around the planet / the next day. And so we have the waxing half. And our idea that we're working with is this is where our little sprout, our little plant that we planted at the new moon, sprouts out a branch, right? It veers off into an opposing direction. And so we can see, if we look up into the sky or we look at a chart of the moon, that when we have our waxing half and our waning half, the moon and sun are square to each other. So inherently, with our half moons, there is an element of friction, there is an element of adjustment, and there is an element of decision making. Were we going to go this way or are we going to go that way? What are we doing? What's happening next? This moon is ruled by Mercury, who is traveling through Gemini and is having a variety of adventures this week as well. So we'll get to that in a second. And this is us continuing to work the mutable cross, which is the 4 mutable signs in the chart. And all of our moons in this lunar cycle have been in those mutable signs. And so we have been working it out in the areas of adjustment, change, adaptation, and discovering what needs to be ended so that we can make room for whatever is coming next. Very appropriate energy and ideas and vocabulary for us to work with in the last 4 weeks of spring as we begin to shape change and shed skins and mutate and turn into whatever we need to be next for our summertime work. Okay, so as I've already said, we are officially in the last 7 days of Gemini, Beltane, and spring. So if you've got something to do with any of those energies, you better get to getting, my cowgirls and my cowboys and my cowdays and cowgays. This is the time. There's no need to hesitate because we've only got another week. The waxing half moon is a moon for adjustment and friction, both with an eye for progress and creation, right? This is the waxing half moon. So we're just, a quarter of the way into our current process for this month lunar cycle, the moon month lunar cycle. Um, and friction. Oh no, not necessarily. Friction's awesome if you're trying to start a fire. Friction's awesome when you like rubbing up on something and it feels good, right? So friction can be something that is very necessary and even sought out in our process. But friction also can be ouch. Friction can be we may need, you know, something to help a little gliding action here, please and thank you. So, you know, as you are frolicking throughout Pride Month, make sure that you have lube on hand. The waxing moon in Virgo is reminding you of this. um, but Virgo is intense about organization and accounting, discrimination, analyzing stuff, all of that, and getting our work done. But Virgo can also go overboard with like really exacting critiques and working ourselves into oblivion, like working ourselves into a place of like anonymity. I'm lost in the work. All you see is the work and you don't see the person who's behind it, who's making it all happen. So, the astrology of this moon might feel kind of moody and surreal. Let's get into it. This moon is opposite Saturn and Neptune, and it is square the sun, as we've already discussed, but it's also square Mercury and Venus. And everybody's kind of like hanging out all at the same degrees. So we know to expect moon square sun, because that's what's going down at the waxing and waning half moons. Already talked about that. This is what's bringing in that idea of adjustment and friction, is that square. But we've talked about what squares do for us. They point out, sometimes a little harshly, what's not working, but usually they also come with a good clue of what we could do to progress the circumstances, progress the process, progress the situation, whatever it is that we're working on. And so the square will come in and be like, what the hell is that for? Here, try this instead. And then it's on us to apply it and do the work. Sometimes that's easier said than done. What Mercury and Venus want getting involved with that square is to bring our thoughts and our values and to an extent our aesthetics, including kind of like the way we speak about these things to other people, into the conversation. So we might be saying to ourselves, are my thoughts, my speech, my values in alignment with who I think I am? Or where do I need adjustment to bring them into alignment or to more authentically live my truth, right? However, the moon opposite Neptune can be weird, hazy, confusing, and words that I think are really important when we're hanging out with Neptune are illusory or disillusioning. So Neptune transits can bring us moments that are like, I can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy right now. Huh. And if that's good, that's great. But if it's not good, it's not good. And so that's where the disillusionment can come in. And Saturn, opposite the moon, is just like plain old bummer jams. And can appear as feeling just like straight up depressed, thwarted, alienated, lonely, the classics, right? All the fun stuff. So this whole combination of stuff might make for a day or two where you are examining your alignment with how you wish your life looked, and like, oh, I wish I was doing this kind of work in the world, or I wish I was contributing to community in these following ways. Especially where you want to improve yourself, especially where you want to improve the work that you're doing for community, right? This is waxing, eye for improvement. But we're having a general feeling of loneliness, inferiority, and disillusionment. Super duper funky stuff like guilt or shame might come up, or memories of failures and missed opportunities from the past. And so altogether, this is like the place where the Virgo nar might come in to play. And so we might be like super nitpicky with ourselves or others, really critical or petty or really skeptical of anything that seems like quote unquote too optimistic. The powers that be on this day might feel insurmountable, or your dreams might feel like they're really far away, and in this point of like harsh criticism against self of like, why am I trying to dream up these ridiculous fantasies? Oh my god, I should be going for things that are so much more practical. Duh, I'm so stupid for thinking that. It can come through that way because when Virgo is not doing good, it gets really, really, really self-critical. Like, really self-critical. So Virgos, quit it. Respectfully. Hardcore Virgo placements. Also, you, stop that. I see you there. That's, shush, stop that. So this whole Gemini lunar cycle, the last month has brought us moons that have all been conjunct or square to or opposing Saturn. Hooray! So it's been like a month of going toe to toe with our emotions versus angry grandpa, which, if you're new here, that's my nickname for Saturn. But the gift, right? Yeah. Gift of an opposition is that it is an opportunity to look at places in our lives that feel like they have come to an impasse and try to find ways to integrate the wisdom from both bodies. So the medicine, I think, for this week is, or at least these first few days of the week, is one, try not to do anything of like super great importance if you can avoid it, because it's very likely that you're going to bring a really pessimistic viewpoint and miss the parts that are good, like too critical, too bummer jam. Two, don't take yourself too seriously. That is definitely a thing that Saturn will do. Like, no, this is the worst. It's for real, man. Like, hey, like, okay, calm down, Grandpa. Let's get you to bed, okay? Let's get you a nap. So don't take yourself too seriously. I mean, also, it is Gemini season. We love you, Geminis. But also, because this transit is activated by the moon, it's going to pass pretty quickly. Now, we've got astrology for the rest of the week to deal with, but in terms of the moon and the emotions and like stuff coming up from the past and all of that element of it, that part is going to pass fairly quickly. And importantly, you're probably going to have like a really different take on the situation in like 24 to 48 hours, right? It's going to change that fast. So, there's some pieces of advice. And number 3, chill, my dog. Forego any mind-altering substances. And I'm going to say it again later in the podcast, but truly, this week, it's just not a super duper great week for stuff that's going to take you way out of your body. But you might, if you feel like you can do it in a way that's not going to get hypercritical or freaked out, break down a work area and clean it, reorganize it, show it some love if that feels good. And remember to hydrate and eat, because Neptune transits, as I just said, really pull us out of our bodies. And I learned that from Jessica Lanyadoo. I know I talk about her a lot on this podcast, but I really do love that astrologer. She is just absolutely amazing. And I learned that from her. So if you're feeling neutral as you're cruising through this, right? Like maybe that Saturn information is coming through and you're like, yeah, it's a little harsh, but you got a point. Yep, let's integrate that. Good piece of advice. Thanks so much, Saturn. If you're feeling neutral or even positive during this transit, this is an awesome chance to integrate emotion-based self-care routines that bring structure and stability to your life. That's like the best of hanging out with the moon in Virgo and Saturn and Pisces in an opposition, in my opinion. And like kind of seeing where those things like are the same thing, you know. The rest of the astrology this week continues with the fogginess, but it's not quite as bad. And we'll get to it in just a second here. Within the framework of Beltane, this week is our last moment to organize the spring work that we are putting away and to get your summertime works dialed in. Whatever that is, if that's adventures, if that's like projects, if that's just like stuff that you're working on internally, all equally valuable and important. But this is just a great week to kind of, you know, even with all of the stuff, with the Virgo energy, and this being our last 7 days, this is a really great time to just kind of like, how am I doing? Am I dialed in? Am I pointing in the direction I mean to be pointing in? All right. Just watch for the internal dialogue, veering into the direction of like unnecessary judgment or perfectionism or any kind of like weird self-denial stuff. That's where that can kind of like get off the rails. Okay, so I've mentioned it multiple times. Let's talk about the astrology of this week. The astrology of June 13th through June 20th. Over the course of this week, we have a lot of movement in the sky. So we start out June 14th with Mercury cazimi the sun. What does the word cazimi means? It means basically kind of like in the heart of. And so from where we are on Earth, if we could look out into the stars and the universe, we would see that the sun and Mercury are perfectly lined up with each other. In fact, Mercury is on the opposite side of the sun, so we wouldn't even be able to see it. Even if we could see it, we can't. And I love that imagery because it's like over there, right? It's like out there. So this is a great moment for calling in messages from the universe. You could work with divination systems, free writing, or even like announcing your plans to the universe. This also could be a great time to have an important talk with someone, as long as you've got like the other energies in check a little bit. So as we move through the rest of the week, Venus, then Mercury, and then the sun all square Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces and then head directly into Cancer. So the moodiness brought in by Saturn might fade, but the fogginess probably not, or may not. These are all squares. They're all squares. So all of these squares are potentially all going to contain like a touch of melancholy or moodiness, ennui, maybe a little like existential, like, you know, fugue state kind of a jam. But the most common aspect, I think, is confusion and idealism. All week, you might be feeling low energy. You might be feeling fatigued. You might be feeling just like, I don't care. I just don't have it in me to like deal with this. You might be wandering around in a fugue state and just like confused, hazy, unfocused. Any of those types of words are appropriate. This is not a great week to like sign an important contract or make a super important decision, but life is lifing, right? So you might have to do that this week. If there's a way that you can get a trusted advisor or a best friend or like a second set of eyes to read the fine print, you know, go over the thing with you, it's really important. And also potentially to be a sounding board for you, because that idealism thing with Neptune transits, we oftentimes we will only see the best of something or even the fantasy of the thing and not the reality of the thing. And so it's also a week where, in our haziness and our confusion, we may run across somebody that like is trying to take advantage of that. So again, having a second set of eyes or another person to like, utilize as a soundboard for like, how does this sound to you? And they might be like, that sounds like it's a scam, actually. Like, just hold off for a few days before you, commit to anything. If you can. In the middle of all of this, Mercury conjuncts Venus at 0 degrees of Cancer. So we might also have a yearning this week to get super deep into our relationships to the point of talking stuff to death or expecting our relationships to look like fantasies and having like unrealistic expectations for our romantic partners or the people that we are in relationship with, in terms of like having this idyllic fantasy in our mind and then expecting humans to be able to act like that or want to for that matter. After all of that, all of these planets mob into Cancer. And Cancer vibes can also be melancholy, right? So there's that like hint of like bittersweet sadness in the air. And these are all words, as I'm saying this, so these are all words that I'm remembering that we were utilizing to describe Saturn's transit through Pisces in general, a year and a half ago or whenever it was that Saturn entered Pisces. There is a romantic sadness about Saturn hanging out in Pisces. So even though Saturn in Pisces is only part of the transits that we're dealing with, a lot of these other transits have a similar vibe to them. If there are ways for you to work with that in a healthy way, go with it. Because you might make some really good art. You might write some good songs. You might paint them and make it, you know what I mean? Like you might produce something that's really moving and expressive for people. And it isn't like we are like short on sadness or terrible things happening in the world. And this might be a way for you to tap into some of that and exorcise it and express it out in the world, and even potentially express it in an artistic way that's like helpful or healing for someone else. You don't put those expectations on yourself necessarily. Just do it for the sake of doing it, if it feels like a good way to express these energies. But also, others might be healed by that work, which is really amazing and one of the cool things about artwork in general. Music, painting, sculpture, dance, whatever it is. So as I said, Cancer vibes can also be melancholy, but Cancer vibes are also super nurturing, and they are focused on nesting and keeping things super cozy at home. So this might be a great week to have like some instant meals on hand, salad in a bag, some frozen pizzas, a giant pile of fruit in the house, that can be quickly made, quickly eaten, because again, I know I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again, Neptune transits really pull us out of our body. We forget to take care of the body. So it might be only once or twice a day that you're like, oh, food. Yeah, that's right. Huh. When was it? Oh, gosh. And rather than, being daunted by the idea of like, oh, I got to go cook in the kitchen for an hour. No, this is boom. It's already ready to go. I literally just have to open it and eat it. We're done. But making sure that you're having something, right? Take care of the corpus. Hydrate. And gentle stretching if that is safe and healthy for you. I think all of these are going to be really helpful. And as I said before, make some art, move your body, paint, sing, whatever. And as I said before, this is not, I think, not a super duper week for mind altering substances. We are going to have so many opportunities for that during summer, I hope. I'm assuming. I'm just going to say that we do. I haven't looked ahead. I don't want to know. Let's just say that it's going to be good, okay? We're practicing it right now. Like, oh no. It's probably going to be fine. Everything's going to work out. It's going to be okay. Plenty of opportunities for that throughout summer. So here are your astrology dates for this week. 6/14, Mercury conjunct Sun at Gemini, 24 degrees. June 16, Venus in Gemini square Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. Same day, Venus enters Cancer. June 17th, Mercury in Gemini square Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. Same day, Mercury enters Cancer. And then later that same day, Mercury conjunct Venus at 0 degrees of Gemini. June 18th, we have our gibbous moon in Scorpio at 12 degrees. And then June 20th, we have the sun in Gemini square Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. And then a few hours later, the sun enters Cancer, and that is summer solstice, end of spring, start of summer, end of Gemini season, start of Cancer season, end of Beltane, beginning of Litha, and midsummer. I will have lots of information about that coming up shortly. Assuredly. Very, very quickly, our fixed stars for this week. Not going to spend too much time on these guys, but our fixed stars this week run us through mostly Orion and various stars that are in the constellation of Orion, but we've also got some others here. So 613, we have the heliacal rising of El Nath, which is found in Taurus. This is the one who butts. This is one of the horns of Taurus. And it's about power and aggression. On this same day, we also have the rising of Mintaka, which is found in Orion's belt and generally connects to ideas of like protection, and is also really good for growing grains, which we know is going to be a huge theme coming up in the next, 2 months or so. Also, same day, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Ensis, which is also found in Orion, and this is Orion's sword sheath. And this star represents putting aggression to good use. Not something we see too often on Earth these days. June 14th, 614, we have the heliacal rising of Al-Nilman. And this is Orion's pearly belt, I'm sure. But it represents ostentation. And, ostentation can be good unless we are showing off in the faces of people who don't have. Ostentation is great until people are sick of us, right? So being flashy, but also knowing when to, put it away, I think. 615, June 15th, we have the heliacal rising of Alheka, which is also found in Taurus. This is the southern horn. And this is power not used well. We have plenty of examples of that here on Earth. I'm sure that's just a coincidence that that's happening right now. June 19th, 619, we have the heliacal rising of Polaris, a star many, many people are familiar with. Marks out the top of the sky, sorta. And this fixed star is found in the constellation of the Bear, and it guides us in our wandering, which is a really important thing to work with, I think, at this time of year, as Gemini season brings us into our ships that we are going to sail the high seas and go have our various adventures within. And so we want to kind of, and I think that this, to me, this ties in with some of that stuff about Mercury Cazimi. They just happen to be happening the same time this week. Where Mercury is out on the far side of the sun, and it's this opportunity for us to kind of yell out to the universe and also ask for information and guidance, right? And so here's also Polaris that's let me help you, let me guide you in your wanderings. I don't know. I love it. And then 620, the heliacal risings of Betelgeuse, which is found in Orion's shoulder and represents war. Super. And the heliacal rising of Menkainen, which is found in the Charioteer's shoulder. The Charioteer is another constellation that is in this portion of the sky. Interestingly enough, because 620, the day that we go into Cancer, Cancer connects us to the Chariot card in tarot. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. People, no, it's not. Come on. All right. Moving into our holy days for this week, I'm only going to talk about 2, and I'm not going to talk about them a whole lot, because at the end of the week, end of the lunar week, as I've pointed out a few times here, hey, it's summer solstice. And we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about and a lot of holy days to go over at that time. We're not going to get into the stuff that stretches between then and now. What I did want to talk about are two ancient Egyptian festivals that are taking place at this time. So, running from June 6th to June 20th this year is, from our ancient Egyptian friends and ancestors, the Feast of the Beautiful Reunion, and it is also called the Beautiful Feast of the Reunion. So if you want to look this up online and do some research, you can type it both ways. In fact, you might want to search it under both names just to get like a broader spectrum. The website that I'm pulling my information from is Ron Pet, which is a extremely detailed accounting of Egyptian calendars from various eras of what we think of when we say ancient Egypt. You know me, I go off, right? It's been a minute since we've had a what am I trying to say? It's been a minute since I've like gone off the rails. Side note to the side note. Tangent, that's the word. See, it's been so long since I've gone on a tangent, I forgot the word tangent. Who am I? What is happening? I gotta get back to my core, dude. What the hell? When we talk about ancient Egypt, we are talking about multiple eras of a civilization that lasted thousands of years. There is ancient Egypt, and then there's other ancient Egypt, and then there's this other ancient Egypt, and then there's another ancient Egypt. And like, by the time the Greeks rolled up, Egypt was like, Egypt even was like, we don't even remember all of our stuff. Like, who are you new guys? But this is a festival that is old and was practiced in various forms for a very long time, and it was a big deal. This festival runs from the Gemini new moon to the following full moon. So whenever the Gemini new moon happens, the festival starts then and then runs to the following full moon. This year, that will connect us from Gemini to the Capricorn full moon, because we already had our Sagittarius full moon 2 weeks ago, plus, if you remember. It's okay if you don't. So, this runs from the new moon to the full moon, and the TLDR of it all is that there are a huge collection of boats that sail from the bottom, quote unquote, the bottom of the Nile, or the top of the Nile, depending on how you want to talk about it, up to the top of the Nile, or the mouth of the Nile, where the Nile starts, basically. And along the way, these boats stop at all of the temples that are on the river's edge. And it is Hathor, or a sacred statue of Hathor, that is being brought on the boat with all of these attendees and all of these helpers and whatnot, priests and priestesses and, the whole gang. And Hathor is brought to each temple, one after another, to receive gifts, to send blessings, all of this stuff. Ultimately, it delivered... let's see, where's the city that she leaves from? Dendera. She leaves from Dendera, and she goes up the Nile, visits all these temples, and she finally makes her way to a city called Edfu, where there is gigantic temples and amazing cool stuff. I believe this is where the Valley of the Kings are. I might be wrong about that. But the ancestors of the gods and goddesses are thought to be in this area as well. And so... she's brought there, and there is this gigantic festival, huge feasting, massive ritual, people losing their minds, whatever. It's crazy, chocolate sprinkles, wearing their underwear on their head. It's just, they're out of control. Okay, they're out of control. And the whole point of it, Jubilee, happiness, love, hippie stuff. Blessing the fields. It's crazy, just really wacky stuff. Um, and even the name of her ship, she is the Lady of Love, and I'm sorry, the boat that she sails in is called the Lady of Love. Like, come on, what? This is so good. Side note to the side note: how many times have I mentioned boats and sailing during Gemini season? Yeah, hello. Okay. So they're fishing and they're doing all this crazy stuff. They make it to Edfu, and they proceed to the sacred place of Ma'at, the goddess, and the sacred places of other gods and goddesses, the sacred places of reeds, the people's enclosure, and all of these festival areas. And they just literally party down for a few days. And then they ultimately bring her into this temple. And I'm trying to find the actual description of the ritual because it's short, but it's really beautiful to me. Maybe just because I can see it in my mind. Um, let's see. So the marriage festival of Hathor and Horus, who she's ultimately going to meet, which reunion commemorates, was a huge holiday celebrated by thousands of people. Again, I'm reading this directly from the website Ron Pet. Thank you, Ron Pet. Not only honored the deities themselves, but served as a blessing of the land as it entered the last part of the year and the hottest part of the season. Side note to the side note, let us remember that ancient Egyptians aligned their calendar with the heliacal rising of the fixed star Sirius, which at that time, and for some of the eras of what we think of as ancient Egypt, rose around this time in the middle of summer, and it aligned with two major weather events or geological events. One, hottest part of the year, droughts potentially, famines potentially, or just like bacon ass heat, and the Nile slowly filling and swelling and ultimately spilling over its edges and spilling out into the farmlands. And when the Nile would crest the river's edges and like spill out into the farmlands, it was also this cause for a massive celebration of like, hooray, the waters are back and the growth cycle can begin again. And that this is all sort of wrapping or beginning the new year for Egyptians. So this festival is basically taking place at the end of the year for them and getting them ready for whatever's going to come next in the next year. As the land began to dry and wither from the heat of the heat and Set's desert encroached on Osiris's cultivation, the reunion of these deities was understood to renew the world so that the floods of Wep-Ron-Pet, aka what we call the Nile, could bring fertility, health, joy, and prosperity to the land once more. And so one of the interesting parts of this is these rituals included the dragging of 4 decorated chests filled with linen that represented the 4 winds and the 4 corners of the earth. I was like, what? That's wild. That's really cool. Once these rituals were completed, Hathor and Horus proceeded to the main temple with great rejoicing, dancing, music, incense, flowers, as you do. Sparkling green and gold powders and dried barley were scattered across the ground to create a shining carpet that resembled fertile fields. I don't know why, but that just strikes me. And I can imagine it's Egyptians. The gold powder was probably gold. It was probably powdered gold. And the green, I don't know if this is true, but what I immediately thought was this, that the green powder might have been verdigris. And verdigris is a green patina that develops on copper, a metal connected to the planet Venus. And why I thought of that is because verdigris in alchemy is represented with a circle with a cross in the middle, which is one of our central symbols that we work with at spring and at summer solstice. Probably maybe just a coincidence. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but that is immediately where my mind went. I was like, holy moly, they were literally sprinkling powdered copper and powdered gold and barley on the ground. Were they? Really? I don't know. But that's what my mind thinks. That's where my brain went with that. But how beautiful would that be no matter what? Like, wow, right? Carried to the sanctuary, the holy couple, the two statues, were then placed before Horus's great shrine and left alone for the night while celebrations continued outside and people continued to party around the temple. So it's like the knocking of sacred boots, right? Truly, like literally that. And then the next day, these two statues were gathered up and they journeyed to the Edfu necropolis to greet the city's ancestors and these gods and goddesses' ancestors, as it were. There's offerings for the triumph over evil. A few maybe sacrifices were presented, along with apotropaic ceremonies to protect Egypt, protect the gods, protect the people, etc., etc. And then this continues to party. They continue to party for 14 days. And then ultimately, on the full moon, everybody's bundled back into the boats, and we sail back down the Nile for a final ritual to Ra and the royal ancestors, and then we head back to Dendera. How beautiful is that? It's so amazing, but it also contains so much of our symbolism that we are working with here at the end of spring, moving through what we think of as Gemini season and getting ready to step into Cancer and summer. We have solar imagery, we have sacred marriage imagery, we have green and gold, we have boats and sailing, we have divination practices, we have ancestor work. It's just like so much stuff all wrapped into one thing. So cool. So cool. Okay. And the other holiday that I wanted to mention, because I just could not mention it, is 613, 614, ancient Egyptian friends and ancestors chewing cucumbers for Sekhmet. I live. And it's the description of this is so short, and it's literally just high priestesses chomping down on cucumbers for the goddess. Now, there is a really beautiful image there of the, can we say phallic image, just getting chomped down and bitten into a bunch of pieces. The teeth of Sekhmet, right? The fiery, potent goddess. But I also think of this as maybe a cooling spell, right? Maybe this is a ritual of some kind where the high priestesses or the priestesses of Sekhmet are eating these watery, juicy, cooling vegetables as a means of watering and cooling the very fiery and sometimes quite aggressive and even potentially violent goddess Sekhmet, who suffers no fools. Okay, so there's our holy days for this week. Are there more? Yeah, there's a ton more, but we're not going to get into it. We're going to save it for next week. Okay. So to wrap this up, I don't really have a tarot card for you to work with this week. If you want to, you could continue to work with your Gemini selection of tarot. That would be the Lover's card, connects to Gemini. The Magician card connects to Mercury. If you want to pull out the Hermit, because we're in a waxing Virgo, sure. Hermit connects to Virgo. But you could also continue to work with your 8 and or 9 and or 10 of Swords, because those also cover our Gemini stretch. So any of those I think are appropriate to work with. For our Virgo lunar body work, actually, before I say that, let me also say our witches work for this week is all that stuff I said about divination and doing free writing, all that. Definitely make some art this week as a means of like processing whatever that Neptune cloudiness is that comes through. Taking advantage of the places where we can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy. Art, spirituality can be a great place for that. It can be. Clear off your altars and your work tables and get them ready for summer. Get them ready for summer solstice and Litha. And if you're up for it, if it feels good, do some organization around the house. But again, don't get all judgy or hypercritical or like seeking perfectionism. We're not fucking with any of that. Stop it. organize your budget with an eye for the future and the adventures of summer. And again, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, I know we're all hurting for cash, and now I'm looking at the time. It's 50 minutes, the longest one yet, right? We're going to keep it short, guys. Don't ever listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about. But if doing money stuff this week really feels like a bummer, do it next week. Do it next week. I wouldn't necessarily say that, maybe push through, but maybe not, right? If you have to, you have to, but if you can put it off for a week, put it off for a week. But again, this is a great time of year to just kind of dial in and check in and sort of assess, like, where am I? And what have we been doing? And where are we going next? All of that. Okay. For our Virgo lunar body work, as I say in every podcast, I am not a doctor of the human corpus. I am a doctor of the moon and stars and the cauldron and the athame and the wand and the pentacle. That's what I'm a doctor of. But for our Virgo lunar moon body work, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action the large and small intestines, the spleen, and the pancreas. These are the parts of our body that are in charge of breaking stuff down and basically it's the organs in our body that discern and make decisions about what's going to stay in the body and what's going to get flushed out of the body. So we want to treat them nicely, give them some treats. They also help with our hormones and all of that good stuff. And then for our Virgo plant body work, we have two different schools of theory. One school of thought says do nothing. When the moon is in Virgo, it is not a great time to mess with your plants. Just leave them alone. But you could do some research on your plants and, if there's something that they're ailing or in some way that you want to improve them, do a little research on them and see what you can do for them. Or cultivating, cutting wood, and harvesting stuff for drying and for storage also makes sense this week. And then also, if we are planting things this week, planting annuals that yield above ground crops, especially viney crops like peas and beans and melons and squashes and tomatoes and peppers and cereals, and cucumbers. Hello, what? Hay, garlic, grains, etc. This is a good week for taking cuttings, for doing grafting, and as I've already said, harvesting above ground plant parts for drying and storage. As we will talk about in our Litha classes and our Litha materials, this is the high part of the year for gathering up herbs and plant parts that we are going to dry and then use for magic, medicine, cooking, etc., etc. So, good week for this. And then when the moon is in Scorpio, which I do believe I gave you the date for that, for our lunar body work, we are awakening, adorning, stimulating, activating, and preparing for action the organs and the processes of pleasure, reproduction, and waste management, aka sex and death. That's what Scorpio is all about. So, yes, vajazzling is, in fact, a holy act this week. Get your butthole bleached. I don't know. Girl, we love you how you are. Don't get your butthole bleached. But I'm just saying, if you do, it's a holy act this week. It's in alignment. And for our plant body work that we are doing when the moon is hanging out in Scorpio, we are planting for sturdiness. And we are planting anything. Anything is going to take off during Scorpio because of all that sexy energy that's in there. Transplanting, grafting, messing around with our annual flowers, our fruits, our veggies that are viney and bare crops above ground. Same list as we just went through for Virgo: corn, tomatoes, watermelon, zucchini. And harvesting seeds and roots for replanting. That's always true for Scorpio, especially true as we move through this portion of the year. Watering your plants, checking your irrigation systems or your watering systems for your plants, doing grafting is effective now. and all of that, all that other stuff that I said for Virgo in terms of like peas and beans and melons and tomatoes and cucumbers and garlic and taking cuttings and graftings and drying and storage of stuff that we're picking up, etc., etc. So, all of that should keep you busy for the next 7 days until we get to summer solstice. All right. If you need something else to do, I don't know, get a coloring book, try a crossword puzzle, balance your checkbook. You kids don't even know what that means. Okay. That's everything. Bless, bless, bless. Thanks for sticking it with me. Thanks for doing this work with me. And thank you, truly, honestly, thank you for doing this work. It might seem, I don't know what it seems like to you, but every time that we earnestly apply ourselves to self-improvement, we make the world a better place to be in. Every time that we earnestly apply ourselves to deep examination, calling out our prejudices, calling out our biases, calling out the programming that we have been entrenched in as children of the empire and growing up in the kyriarchy, being formed as tools of the kyriarchy, especially those of us in the West, and especially those of us who are white or white presenting, hetero or hetero presenting, cisgendered or cis presenting. We are especially molded to be tools of the empire. And fuck that. Okay, like let's work on being the worst cogs in the machine possible. That's my goal every day when I get up. I'm like, I'm gonna mess this up. Like a monkey wrench, kiddo. Hi, that's me. But we're dismantling the thing. So when we stop and we have these weekly check-ins and we're doing this stuff, this is why I haven't said it in a minute since we've come back to it. But this is a weekly ritual for me to do this. And it is that because it's my weekly check-in on, is my compass still pointing in a direction that if I died today and I was standing in front of my gods and goddesses in the moment of being judged by them, which is probably not even remotely how it actually goes down, but whatever. How would I feel? And what would I say? And I would be able to stand there and say, I tried. We can't guarantee success for the things that we attempt in the world. That's part of the thing that we don't have control over. If I write a song, is anybody going to listen? I don't know. If I paint a painting, is anybody going to look at it? I don't know. If I record a podcast and I yell out into the void what I think is going to help me and other people be better and do better, is it going to matter? Is it going to affect anybody? I don't know. I do get emails and messages from people that say, yeah, keep it up, and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, I don't know. That first time that I turned on my microphone and I made notes and I was like, well, let's see what happens, I didn't know. But what I did know was that not trying would be worse than trying and failing. That would be the thing that if, again, I was standing in front of my gods and goddesses, that would be the part that I actually felt shame around, or that I felt like, whoop, that's going to weigh heavy on the scales. I didn't try, and I could have tried. So every time that we come to this work and we dig in on looking at ourselves, or we hold ourselves with care in difficult moments, and we push ourselves to find the third path between two extremes, we're doing that work. That's us trying. We don't know if we're going to succeed. That is not guaranteed, but we're trying. And that, in the face of everything that this world throws at us constantly, that's heroic. That's miraculous. So, thanks for just doing miracles with me every 7 days. It's pretty chill. It's kind of sick. Blessed be, witches.